Here we are at Gwithian Sands. I'm just going to walk to the edge of the car park and walk along the pass. And just carry on going along here. That is the shaft of the Wheel Emily mine, and I think at the far end the retaining wall there is part of the small engine house that was here. Not a very profitable mine. I think it lost £2,000 in its last year of operation. So if we carry on going back up there, we're just going to look over the beach. Okay, so this is Gadrevi Beach now. At the very far end of the beach there's a stream that comes down to it called the Red River. That was quite rich in tin because it goes past the tin workings up at Camborne, so it collects a lot of the waste tin ore that came out of the end of the processing, and it came down the Red River onto the beach here, and there was a business set up. Just in the middle of the frame there's a white building. Immediately to the left there's a chimney, and between the chimney and the Red River there was a processing plant for processing this tin that they actually got from the sand on the beach. But because of the way the tides work, the sand was actually carried from the Red River in the centre of the frame there all the way along here out to in the middle of the beach there, just about where the surfers are behind the fence. So the tin was all swept along to this part of the beach, and to get it back all the way across there was an aerial ropeway that went straight across the sand here. So there will be moving buckets on an aerial ropeway that carried the sand from behind me to the processing plant over there. From Wheel Emily I've walked straight down onto the beach. So this is Gadrevi looking across to the processing plant, and behind me there is Gwithian Beach and a man-made cut which I'm just about to go down. So I've come through to the other end of the cut and we're on Gwithian Beach, and the main concentration of tin in the sand was where the people are surfing underneath the large cliffs. In the early days of the industry they used to take horse and carts along the beach, load them up with sand and bring them back through this cut to straight across the sand to the processing plant on the other side of Gadrevi. I come through to the other side of the cut, so I'm on the Gadrevi side, and by pulling the horses through the cut they didn't have to take them right round this big area of rocks through onto that beach. These rocks go a long way down the beach, so using the cut would enable the horses and carts to work the sand for probably a couple of hours extra each tidal cycle. I come back to the corner of the car park and I'm going to head off down there, because I think the aerial ropeway came right along there. So I've just walked straight from where I was, and that's one of the supports for the aerial ropeway. So it would have carried on straight down there, and I don't know if you can see at the far end there's another block of concrete. That's one of the terminations of the ropeway. That's the blocks where I was. I think the ropeway came straight over there, but that's another support. And eventually the ropeway used to end here, and the sand was brought up in little hoppers, I think, because just round here poking out of the cliff is our two rails. So I think the sand was brought up here, loaded onto these hoppers, and then sent off to the processing plant on the far side of Gadrivi. Eventually they realised that wasn't very economic, so somewhere down there they put some supports in the rock which are still there. I've never actually seen them, and the aerial ropeway continued right to the beach. So the sand would have been loaded up from this part of the beach onto the aerial ropeway and across over there. I've gone down to the cliff edge, which is quite exposed, just to take a photo of the rails and the hopper so that you don't have to go there. I used a camera on the end of a stick. And just along in the middle of the frame now, there are 4 rails coming out. No, 2 rails. And immediately above the bottom rail is the remains of a tipping skip by the look of it. So we've got to get back from here to the car park track again, so I'm going to walk along here and rejoin the path I left a minute ago. So I've rejoined the path from the car park, and I've only come 20 metres because there's the car park. So, and we're heading across to that fence over there. And this is the control room for the wartime decoy site called a Starfish 68, I think. From here they could, as soon as they heard bombers, or they knew bombers were coming this way, within the dunes they would set alight troughs of diesel and water, which gave huge clouds of smoke and steam and made this area look as though it had been bombed. And the hope was that the succeeding aeroplanes would bomb here and not through that gap at the far end of the beach, which was Hayle Power Station. I've never been down there and it's wet, so I'm not going. Okay, so we've now got to join the Southwest Coast Path, and I think that's it, just over there. So I'm going to walk along this path here. So this is the Southwest Coast Path, and up on the top of the little rise up there you can see a stone marker. Those marker posts go all the way down the Southwest Coast Path, so you always know you're on it if you see those. And there's another one just there, and the path just carries on, so you're going to follow that for about 15 minutes probably, until you come across two concrete buildings. And the name has now changed from Hayle Towans to Upton Towans. I'm not sure if there's a absolute dividing line. Just carry on following the really obvious path now until we get to two concrete buildings. So you carry on walking really until you come to here. You can't actually see where here is yet, but if you look in that direction, you can just see the gable ends of a hut. We're just going to carry on going around here. I'll discuss the huts in a minute. I don't know if you can see in front of us there, a nice gentle curving path. The path we've been coming along so far has been fairly tortuous and obviously made for feet. If you look at this one, it's on an embankment. There's a nice gentle curve on it, and I think this is one of the tracks of the narrow gauge railway that ran round the works. This is the furthest extent of it. Because if we just go over here, which is probably the thing that you'll notice more than the one behind me, there's another concrete building. I'll talk about it further, but if you look how it's sunk into the ground, it's almost below ground level here. We'll talk about it in a minute. So we just carry on around what I think is the tram track, or the railway track, and in places along here, if you keep looking at the ground, you'll probably find cinders, which I think is what they used to make the sleepers up with, to pack the sleepers up out. So just carry on this path. It's only about 50 metres from the previous building. We come across this. Notice again, this one isn't sunk in the ground, but it has a bund right the way around it. So starting there, around the back and coming out there. If we go in, it's made of concrete. It looks to me like there was just the bottom line here, you can actually see places where wood has been put inside the concrete. I think that was the floor. That was obviously put there to stop whatever they put in here being damp. At the top there, you can see it had a wooden roof on it, because you can see the purlins, where the purlins went into the concrete. The fact it's got a blast wall all the way around it, the bund, tends to make you think that it was probably where they stored explosives. So it's well away from the adjacent huts and hidden by this bund. So if this exploded, the adjacent ones didn't go off. It looks to me like there might be a ventilator up there as well, some sort of ventilation. They've obviously decided not to have a window there because they've concreted that up. Another ventilator of some description, or a drain. So I tend to think these were magazines where they stored the finished explosives before taking it away. And that's why they would have had this narrow gauge railway running alongside it to bring the explosives out here. So we're just going to carry on going along here, along the path now. I'm only 20 metres away from the last hut, and you can see the path there is built up on both sides. That's an obvious embankment to me. So I think this is where the narrow gauge line ran. And it looks like it's getting quite cindery just there. Charcoal of some description, or cinders of some description. There's another of the magazines. Again, it's half buried and half with a blast wall around it. To me, this has obviously been built up, this section I'm walking on. The only worry I've got about it being a railway is that it's quite steep. I don't know what the actual gradient is, but it looks steep to me. It just has the feel of being a railway line and not a footpath. So I'm just heading towards that chimney eventually, along what I think is the railway line. But just in the bottom here, I don't know if you can detect it because it's into the sun at the moment, there's another bund round what would have been a hut as part of the nitroglycerine process. This is the long straight stretch. I'd love to see the marks of the sleepers, but I haven't seen any. So if we just go over here for a minute, it's a bit easier to see now. You can see there's a hollow square in the bottom with a bund all the way around it. And there's another one just there, and looks like there's another one just there. And I think all the way along here there are bunds where they had the wooden sheds as part of the process. I'm just looking along. So I'm now at the nitric acid factory. I've never been along here, so I don't know what I'm going to find. I'm on some sort of concrete base, and that's the nitric acid factory. I'm facing into the sunlight, so I'll try and walk along and look. So I'm standing inside the factory. I don't know very much about the process. That looks like either the exit for a pipe or a drain. There are lots of engineering bricks around. They're not normal bricks, they're engineering bricks. And some of the bricks have actually got names on. Oh, there's one. S-Day. The bricks had to be resistant to acid, so they were all special bricks. I'm just leaving the factory now through the final door, and you can see the whole of the floor was made up of these engineering bricks. Metalin. I have to look it up. That's the chimney to the acid factory, which is just over here. So I've just walked down here, I'm almost on the edge of the Towans because just here are the buildings, the bungalows. I'm going along there because I think the mainline railway track is along here somewhere. I've just been walking along here looking in the backs of these gardens for the side of the railway track, which was meant to be somewhere along here. I just turned round. So that's the unloading platform for the main line railway that came from Hayle Station, and that was put in during the war. Didn't last for very long because it must have been put in about 1516, and the factory closed in 1920. So I'll just carry along here and see if we can see any signs of the railway. Just walking along what would have been the railway line, and I noticed in the path here it's actually ballast. So that's the line of the railway going straight along there. That's the railway. I'm going to go up here and see if I can get to the top of the hill from this direction. So that's the railway running in the obvious bushed areas along to Hayle. So I've just come up here. I'm now going along that road and then up that area of grass up there. There's a building of some description just below me. They look like the supports to a tank, and actually on the bottom, just below them, there's another tank. Complete with a building, and quite a few more buildings down there. That's between us and the railway line. I just carried on up the hill. Now at the very top of the hill, where there were obviously some pretty major tanks. I don't think they were buildings, because you wouldn't need that much concrete to support a building. So I think the fact we're at the top of the hill makes me think it's a storage tank. So the very start of the process would have been up here, and as the process continued, it moved further down the hill under gravity. So there'd be pipes from here to the next building, then to the next building, then to the next building. So we'd never have to pump nitroglycerine up a hill, because you couldn't pump it without danger of it exploding. So that's the holiday park. In fact, some of the roads of the holiday park seem to be made up on the line as some of the narrow gauge railway lines that I drew in. So the works spread from here right the way across to the caravans. You can just see a few buns down there, but if you look on the map, they're fairly obvious. If we look that way, there's Godrevy Light. The obvious hill there is Jack Straw's Hill, but that's where the original nitroglycerine factory was sited. And when they started having to make cordite for the Navy, they needed extra supplies of nitroglycerine. So where I've just walked, and this bit here, is the new nitro factory. And I'm standing on new nitro hill, and that was put in just for the meant to make cordite, to make nitroglycerine to make cordite. The acid factory chimney you can just see over the top there. In the trees over there, the white silos, storage tanks, that's now the concrete or cement works. But that was actually the sulfuric acid factory, which was fairly short-lived. Originally they bring sulfuric acid in glass carboys. Then they put a sulfuric acid factory there, but it obviously didn't suit their needs, because they actually closed that down before they closed the factory down. So the assumption is that they went back to bringing in sulfuric acid in glass carboys. And we're going to head off in that direction down there, straight down this hill. So from the top of New Nitro Hill, I'm walking towards St Ives. It's quite a steep slope down here. In the bottom, some more blocks that looks as though they were supporting something. And I think that's a bund running around the whole of that area. It looks like it's part of this path, but I think there's a bund going across the bottom, starting in the centre of the frame, across there and then up there. So I'm just starting on the way down now. I've just come off the track I was on for a minute, because when I was looking at the aerial photographs I picked up this line here in front of me. There's a track that runs around there, another track that runs down there. I had assumed it was a railway line, and that was points, but where I am it's far too steep for it to be a railway line, I think. I wonder whether it's just a pipe run, unless this, what I'm standing on, has subsided onto what was the railway track. But looking back, I can't see any sign of a railway track either. So I think this is some sort of pipe run. I'm going to walk down this anyway to the bottom. It's obviously man-made. I just crossed over the path that I was on. Well, it certainly wasn't a railway. It's come along there. My guess is it goes out round that, through a gap over there. So we'll head off back to the path I was on. This is where I was before I went back and did that slight detour. I'm now on the track that's made almost entirely of cinder, and that through there I think is a railway line that runs through that embankment through to the main railway. So from there we're going round here. building here. That's in between two bunds because there's another bund there. So don't take the left hand on, take the right hand path. And again, I think this is all railway line. Okay, if we stop there and just turn back, just in here, there's a very small bund that would have had a small wooden shed in it. Come back out again. There's another one just there that would have had a shed in it. And if we just carry on along here, and look back, that's a fairly long hill, and in the face of it, each of the folds is actually a bund that had a small shed in it, very small shed by the look of them. They're the sheds where either the dynamite mixture or the gelignite mixture was extruded and wrapped with wax paper to make it in a usable form. The idea of the bunds was that if one shed went up, hopefully the one next to it wouldn't. And when I was taken round this site, one of the people there, her family used to work here, and if you were working in these sheds making sticks of dynamite, etc., no more than one person from any family could work in one shed. So if there are two people from a family working in this area, they would have to work in separate sheds. A sobering thought. I'm now walking along the tramway again. Lots of cinder on the track. To join the main track, you can see the line went along there. And joined the main track just here. And that's the building we looked at earlier, or one of the buildings we looked at earlier. So that's the end of the walk, really. You just have to walk back to the car park, which is about 20 minutes walk away, and just retrace the steps that I brought you here along.